long ago. I
Can we
think,
increase the volume? Hi, ma'am. You're here on screen. We're just waiting for the technical staff to get set, and we will begin.
Okay.
Good evening, everybody. We are here for the session on shifting gears from cooperatives to self-help groups. Can sustainable entrepreneurship and social business be the next model? The objective of this session is to discuss whether sustainable entrepreneurship and social business can be the next model in Kerala to relieve societal pressures and produce progressive externalities. I will briefly introduce our speakers and the chair for today. Our chair today is Dr. Madhura Swaminathan. Dr. Madhura is a professor at the Economic Analysis Institute of the Indian Statistical Institute, Bangalore. She has a doctorate in economics from the University of Oxford and works on issues pertaining to food security, agriculture, and rural development. Happy to have you here, ma'am. Going to keep the introduction short. Hope that works for you.
Yes, good evening, everybody.
Hi. And next we have Dr. Joy Elliman. Dr. Joy is the current Director General of Kerala Institute of Local Administration. He was awarded the Outstanding Community Builder Award by UNDP India in 2007. And he was a core team member and technical advisor for the South Asia Climate Proofing and Growth Development Climate Change Innovation Program. Happy to have you here, sir. Hope you can hear us. Dr. Joy? You're either speaking on mute or you are not able to listen to it. Yeah, you are now not on mute.
Okay. Shall I talk now?
Yes, we'll just do a brief round of introductions and then I will hand over to the chair for her to proceed. Is that okay?
So I don't know, what I'm asking is that shall I have
No,
my
not
presentation
yet.
now
Not
or
yet.
later?
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
You can proceed.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Next we have with us Nora Herrera Rodriguez. Nora Herrera Rodriguez is the Minister of Communes and Social Movements of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. She served as the constituent of the National Constituent Assembly for the communal sector for the Capital District. Happy to have you here, ma'am. Hope you can hear us. Is the audio coming from there? It's not. We just continue with the introductions. Hope that's okay with you while the technical bit is being figured. Finally, not finally, we have two more speakers. Dr. D. Rajshekhar is here with us. Dr. Rajshekhar is a HAG professor at the Center for Decentralization and Development at the Institute for Social and Economic Change, or ISEC, Bengaluru. He's been working at ICGE since 1990. He's a visiting scholar at the universities of Oxford, Melbourne, Sussex, and at the Center for Development Research in Copenhagen. He's worked extensively on decentralization, social protection, microfinance, and local organizations. Happy to have you here, sir. And finally, Sharda Muralidharan IAS will be joining us slightly late, ma'am, for your note as well. She'll be joining slightly late, about 15 minutes, but I will proceed with her introduction anyway. Sharda works in the development sector for the government of Kerala. Her areas of interest are women empowerment, poverty reduction, and social justice. She headed the Kudumbashri mission of the government of Kerala for 6 years, from 2006 to 2012. And then went on to become the Chief Operating Officer of the National Rural Livelihoods Mission of the Ministry of Rural Development, Government of India till December 2013. She will eventually join us. Now I hand over to the chair for the session. Thank you, everybody.
I hope we can have the connection to Caracas or Venezuela.
Can we just check that? 1 second, ma'am. Audio from Venezuela. Can we just do a quick round of check on everybody's mic to see if everybody's audible?
Yeah, I think here it won't be a problem in India. Let's just check
Buenos
with them. I
días.
guess he's the first speaker, right? The minister will be.
Yes,
the
this is Sonia, and I will be helping out with the minister with the translation, because it turns out that there is no translator there in Caracas.
Okay. So hi, Sonia.
Hi.
Are they
This is
connected?
Rajshekar. Can you hear me, Professor Swaminathan?
Yes, very well.
Thank you very much.
So Sonia, should we connect? Is it
Yes,
audible?
I'll just ask Venezuela.
Yeah.
Estimada ministra, señora ministra, ¿usted nos escucha?
Sí, buenos días.
Muy buenos días, señora.
Okay. Honorable Ministra, bienvenidas a Kerala virtualmente. And we are very happy to have you here, Ministra de Poder Popular para las Comunas y Movimientos Sociales. It is a pleasure, and I hope you can visit once the pandemic is over. I hand over to you for about 20 minutes, and after about 15 minutes, I'll wave my hand. Sonia, you can keep that in mind. Please, and I request everybody else, even the speakers, other speakers, to please mute your mics. Over to you. Ministra,
Muy buenos
Dale,
días.
ministra, ya puede empezar, sí, señora.
Muy buenos días. Bueno, saludar muy especialmente a la señora Shailaja, ministra de la Salud, Bienestar Familiar y Justicia Social del gobierno de Kerala, a quien
Good day
me
to
honra.
everybody. Good day to everybody. I would like to give a special greeting to everybody here, but in particular,
Quiero también saludar a quien nos está ayudando en la traducción, a Sonia Gupta,
a greeting also to Sonia Gupta, who's helping us in the translation.
saludar a la señora Coromoto Godoy Calderón, nuestra embajadora de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela ante el gobierno de la India.
My special greeting also to Koromoto Godoy, the ambassador of Venezuela to the Republic of India.
Saludar a la directora del panel, doctora Madura Swaminathan.
A greeting to the chairperson of the panel today, Dr. Madhura Swaminathan.
Y saludar al honorable panel invitado en esta actividad.
And also a special greeting to
Me honra la invitación que se me realiza porque en mí se está invitando a todo el pueblo venezolano.
It is a great honor to have received this invitation, because in this invitation you're not inviting just me but the entire people of Venezuela.
Yo quiero saludar también a todos los presentes, participantes presenciales y virtuales de todos los países que hoy estamos invitados a esta gran actividad.
I also send my greetings to all those who are attending this evening's panel, those who are attending on-site as well as virtually attending this important session.
Rubén Darío. Bueno, saludo especial a la señora Coromoto Godoy Calderón, nuestra embajadora de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela ante la República de la India.
Yes, and I salute once again Kozhikode, our ambassador of Venezuela in India.
Yo quiero comenzar esta breve exposición y aprovechar estos significativos minutos para las venezolanas y los venezolanos, sobre todo porque nuestro ministerio tiene una gran responsabilidad, que es acompañar a la organización del pueblo venezolano.
Our ministry has a great responsibility in assisting the Venezuelan people.
Quiero resaltar la labor que hemos tenido las mujeres al frente del gobierno revolucionario de cada una de las instancias de las bases del poder popular, enmarcadas en comunas y en consejos comunales.
I would particularly like to highlight the role that women have been playing in the grassroots level communal councils and the communes in Venezuela.
En este momento, nuestro gobierno bolivariano, encabezado por nuestro presidente constitucional Nicolás Maduro Moros, en quien además les envía un afecto, un caluroso saludo, y quien además ha venido acompañando a nuestro pueblo para la organización enmarcado en la Revolución Bolivariana.
I also convey to you all the greetings of our constitutional president, President Nicolás Maduro, who has been accompanying us in this process of
algunos datos importantes en relación a la organización popular.
I'd like to give you some basic data about the organization of Popular Power.
En este momento tenemos organizados 48.570 consejos comunales.
At this moment, we have something like 48,587 organized communal councils in Venezuela.
Tenemos también organizadas 3.268 comunas en todo el país.
We also have more than 3,000 communes all over the country.
Enmarcados en estas organizaciones de base del poder popular, tenemos hasta ahora 29.568 organizaciones socioproductivas, organizaciones que están produciendo hoy en el seno de las familias venezolanas, pero también enmarcadas en la propiedad colectiva, en la participación colectiva.
So we have almost 30,000 social organizations which are a part of this the basis of Popular Power, and these are organizations which are involved in production within families and form an important part of this entire structure of Popular Power.
Quiero resaltar la labor que hemos venido durante estos 22 años de Revolución Bolivariana a la llegada de nuestro comandante y líder supremo Hugo Chávez, de las mujeres.
So as I said before, what I would like to do today is to highlight the role of women in the construction of this, the grassroots base of Popular Power over the 20-odd years of the Bolivarian Revolution, starting, which had of course been launched by our comandante Hugo Chávez.
De esos 48.570 consejos comunales, hay una participación de 2.274.270 personas.
So these communal councils, which I was telling you about nearly 48,500 odd communal councils, have the participation of more than 2 million people.
Y de esa cifra, la participación de las mujeres está en 1.288.028. para un porcentaje del 56,60% de participación de las mujeres en los consejos comunales.
And if we are to talk about the participation of women in concrete, it is about 56.63% of the entire participation in the communal council.
Esas cifras que le acabo de dar son las que corresponden a las vocerías ejecutivas de los consejos comunales.
So this figure of 56.63 that I have given you correspond to the spokespersons and the executives of the communal councils.
En cuanto a las vocerías de unidad de Contraloría Social y de Administración Financiera y de la Comisión Electoral, tenemos hasta ahora la participación de 3.006.436 personas que participan en esta instancia del Consejo Comunal.
I didn't quite get it. Señora, usted dice que estos 3 millones son de 6,000, son
de las vocerías de los consejos comunales enmarcadas en la unidad de Contraloría, Administración y Comisión Electoral. Son unidades que tiene cada consejo comunal.
Okay, so each communal council has a unit. Ambassador, would you be able to tell me what this is, the vocería?
Son unidades de trabajo que tienen cada uno de los consejos comunales. Y estas personas somos los voceros del pueblo.
Okay, so each communal council has working units, and these units have spokespersons. In that sense, the communal council is divided into smaller units, and these reach out to something like 3,006,000, the participation of 3,006,000 people.
Es importante destacar que de este número de voceras y voceros, 1.709.727 somos mujeres, y eso alcanza un total en porcentaje del 56,87% de participación de las mujeres.
And out of these spokespersons of the units of the percent are women, who represent the voice of, so to say, of the people at the very base level. So that's the percentage of women, 56.87.
Es importante destacar que cuando hablamos de las organizaciones socioproductivas que tienen que ver con la producción de este pueblo en cada una de las comunas y consejos comunales, la participación de las mujeres está en un 52,76%. Y quería también, quiero también resaltar...
Sí, sí, señora, por favor, siga, sí.
Sí, quiero resaltar también que en este hecho productivo está enmarcado en procesos textiles, en lo que tiene que ver con panaderías, con la siembra, con todo ese tejido agrícola que se caracteriza sobre todo porque están a pequeñas escalas, en lo que nosotros hemos denominado patios productivos, que están en cada una de las viviendas de las venezolanas y venezolanos.
So basically these socio-productive units which form part of the communes and the communal councils, some 52.76% of these are women, and these socio-productive units are the ones which take care, which are involved in production at small scale. So these are textiles or bakeries or what we call the production of the backyard, the patio production, which is what the families, each Venezuelan families are involved in. So out of these socio-productive units, which are a part of the communes and the communal council, some 52.76 are women.
Es importante resaltar en relación al sistema de protección de nuestro gobierno que está especialmente dirigido a la familia, pero sobre todo a nuestras mujeres y a nuestras niñas y niños. El presidente Nicolás Maduro ha hecho énfasis en proteger a la familia con programas fundamentales como por ejemplo parto humanizado, madres del barrio, hogares de la patria, con las cuales nuestro pueblo, sobre todo nuestro pueblo mujer, recibe de forma directa a través del carnet de la patria importante apoyo financiero para sustentar en el marco de esta guerra económica y del bloqueo a cada una de nuestras familias.
So through these socio-productive units, apart from the socio-productive units, we also, these communes and communal councils also work as a huge protection system for the Venezuelan family, because the Venezuelan family becomes the target of state protection, but particularly women and children, and the emphasis of has been on programs which are fundamental to the health of the women. For example, the women's health, reproductive health, but also families who receive through the national identity card system a major financial help, which kind of helps them to cope with the financial difficulties which the Venezuelan people are facing in form of the blockade and the US sanctions.
Porque es importante decir que la mayor participación en el marco de las bases del poder popular en este momento las tenemos las mujeres. Bueno, porque la guerra incesante, el bloqueo económico ha estado dirigido sobre todo a nosotras las mujeres, quienes en nuestro país llevamos adelante a cada una de nuestras familias.
Because we believe that this entire attack, the war which has been unleashed on us, the financial war which has been unleashed on us is directly impacts women, and therefore in the structure of our popular power, the women have this protagonizing role in confronting the financial war.
Es por ello que establecido en nuestra Constitución de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela, cuál es nuestra Carta Magna, nuestra norma máxima que establece la participación activa y protagónica del pueblo, nosotros lo hemos tomado, y es por ello que hablar hoy de vocerías en un consejo comunal, en una comuna, parte porque nos facultan los habitantes de cada una de esas instancias de gobierno en el territorio. Es decir, cada una de las familias que componen un consejo comunal o una comuna nos dan a las voceras y a los voceros facultad para hablar en nombre de ellos.
So it has to be understood that the whole idea of having a spokesperson for the communes and the communal council has been guaranteed in our constitution, and which kind of also guarantees an active participation of the people in general, because each one of these spokesperson of the communal council or the commune in that sense represents all the families that are a part of the commune.
También destaco que la organización del Poder Popular está enmarcado en leyes orgánicas, lo que significa que cada acción que como pueblo tenemos tiene una sustentabilidad, una norma jurídica, la cual nos da potestad para la organización popular, enmarcada también en la Contraloría Social, en la producción, en cada una de nuestras comunidades. Todas y cada una de las acciones que realizamos en cada uno de los consejos comunales y comunas, unidades productivas, tienen una ley, tienen una norma, una ley orgánica.
So I would also like to highlight that the popular power which is organized in communal councils, communes, and these socio-productive units are governed by an organic law. and which is legal. In other words, all these communal councils and communes have a legal status. They are legal units and they have a judicial norm, and therefore all their actions have a legal status.
Sonia, if another
Además, que en estos 22 años de revolución bolivariana, desde la llegada de nuestro comandante Chávez, la participación popular ha estado en la vanguardia. Hemos sido nosotras y nosotros como pueblo quienes nos hemos organizado en cada una de las comunidades para acompañar a nuestro gobierno revolucionario. Además, que el comandante Chávez nos habló de que en el marco de la organización del pueblo y en la comuna es donde realmente vamos a fortalecer el socialismo bolivariano, el socialismo revolucionario y profundamente chavista.
And that is why I think it is important to understand that it is in these structures of popular power that the Bolivarian revolution has actually developed, and this is how we have supported the Bolivarian revolutionary process led by initially by Comandante Chávez. Un momento, señora, parece que la presidenta nos advierte algo. Yes, Madhura?
two. What was she holding up? Was that the laws? The red
That's
book?
the constitution.
Okay. And second is that I know with translation it takes time, but we have other speakers, so if we could wind up in about 5 minutes.
Yeah. No, ya que, señora ministra, con la traducción se ha tardado mucho su sesión, pero si podemos más o menos concluir en 5 minutos.
Bueno, nosotros quiero también resaltar que en este momento de la revolución bolivariana nosotros hemos trascendido la organización popular y hoy ya estamos hablando de ciudades comunales. Estamos trabajando en el marco de nuestra organización popular sobre las ciudades comunales, que nos relacionamos entre comunas y que vamos avanzando para tener mayor poder, mayor gobernanza.
So I would like to, the one thing that I'd like to highlight is that in our process of building grassroots popular power, we are now in the process of transcending the communal councils and communes and building communal cities. We are already in the process of building entire communal cities, commune-based cities. And this
Tenemos también, tenemos también en este momento y desde el año 2015 un parlamento comunal que se encarga, además de legislar, un parlamento comunal nacional que legisla, que realiza normas en cada una de sus comunidades y que luego, en el marco de nuestra nueva Asamblea Nacional, recién electa el pasado 6 de diciembre, todo lo que este pueblo debate, legisla en su comunidad, es pasado a la Asamblea, al Parlamento Nacional, a la Asamblea Nacional, que es uno de los poderes de nuestro país. Entonces esto quiere decir que efectivamente la participación activa y protagónica que tenemos como pueblo, bueno, hoy y desde la llegada del comandante Chávez es escuchada por nuestro gobierno revolucionario.
Yeah, so the final point that has been made is that since 2015 there has been a communal parliament also, or the commune parliament also, and at the national level, which legislates at the national level. And on 6th December, a new National Assembly has been elected. All this goes on to show the major consolidation of the popular power, which has been the sustenance of the Bolivarian process.
Y para culminar, bueno, debo también decirles que esta servidora es vocera en su consejo comunal, en su comuna, y que hoy acompaña a nuestro presidente Nicolás Maduro Moros en la gestión de gobierno. Esto es parte de lo que nos indicaba el comandante Chávez y que hoy como pueblo agradecemos al presidente.
And I would like to say that the person who's speaking before you is just another spokesperson of one of the communal councils who today as a minister is helping out the Bolivarian government headed by President Maduro and in a process which was launched by Comandante Chavez. Señora Ministra, hay algunas preguntas, pero las preguntas se le harán al final de la sesión. Y las preguntas son cómo las cooperativas trabajan bajo las sanciones. Esta es la pregunta que tiene.
Thank you. Can I request Reggie to be on mute, please? Reggie Vamadevan, please mute yourself. Please mute yourself, Reggie. Reggie Vamadevan, please mute. Okay. Gracias, Ministra, por sus palabras. And it's a very interesting but also new description for us of the social movement in Venezuela, and particularly the role of women, and we shall take up questions later. And I move on now to ask Dr. Joy Ellerman, who is Director General of the KILA, to speak. And after 15 minutes, I will give you a wave. Dr. Joy. Is Dr. Joy? Can we have Dr. Joy Ellerman? Okay, then I will request Dr. Rajashekar to begin his speech.
Thank you very much, Professor Swaminathan, and I'll do that. Just allow me to share my PPT. The host has disabled me to share the screen. Maybe I think, may I request somebody from the technical team to help me?
Please allow screen share for the speaker. Rajshekar, do you want to begin? Start telling us what you're going to tell us.
Yeah, sure.
Sir, can you hear me?
Because I'm getting messages from Prasil that it will be soon allowed. Okay, yeah. Well, maybe I'll begin, and then as once it is allowed, then I'll upload the PPT. At the outset, let me thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to make the presentation. My presentation is on role of cooperatives and self-help groups in social enterprise development. Okay, 1 second, please. Now I can upload. Can you see this, Swaminathan?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. And the presentation will be in 4 parts. First, let me begin with the concept of social enterprise, and then followed by the kind of work that each of these organizations is doing insofar as the development of social enterprises is concerned. And finally, I will take up a question that which of these organizations is best suited to develop social enterprises. Let me begin with the concept of social enterprises. This is an enterprise. The reason why I am beginning with the concept is that this is the kind of framework that I will be adopting to analyze the material that I will be presenting today. This is an enterprise that tries to attain sustainability and scalability in their social mission through a blend of social value creation, market orientation, and entrepreneurial qualities in order to achieve a balanced impact and irrespective of the legal identity of the social enterprise. So this is the definition. And with this, let me now move on to look at the status of cooperatives, first of all, and then the kind of role that they are playing in social enterprise development. And cooperative, according to International Cooperative Alliance, the cooperative is an autonomous association of persons united voluntarily to meet their common economic, social, and cultural needs and aspirations through a jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprise. And these are membership-based organizations and are owned, managed, and controlled by members. They are characterized by collective thinking and democratic decision-making process. And these characteristics enable the members to participate voluntarily in the problem identification, generation of idea, piloting the idea, and eventual problem solving. And this is something which will help the cooperatives to, in a way, conceive social enterprises and then implement them or sustain them or scale them up. The other attributes like governance, principles, and social effect of cooperatives are also ideal for social enterprises. And here some data on number of cooperatives in India from 1984 to 85 to 2016 and 17. Yes, it can be seen that the number of cooperatives increased. This is the blue lines, and then this is the increased. But the number of members is more or less, the growth is not as much as the number of cooperative societies. As a result, the average membership has declined. And I am not going to focus all the types of cooperatives, as you are all aware that there are trade cooperatives, producers cooperatives, and so on and so forth. Today, I will be presenting evidence relating to milk cooperatives, or what are they called, dairy cooperatives, and they have also had very good growth in India. 2011, 12 to 2016 and 17. And then this is the number of cooperatives in 1,000, which increases from 148,000 to 177,000. And then here I am presenting annual growth rate just to make some kind of comparison. The number of cooperatives increased by 3.8% during this period of about 6 years. And the number of members has gone up by 2%, about 2%. But look at the milk procured through the milk cooperatives. It has gone up by about 10%. So also the milk marketed, this is also gone up by 10%. So which means whatever the milk that is procured, this is the marketed. The rest of it is basically processed for other byproducts. And this is the next. The next few slides are based on some studies that we have carried out our institute, that is namely Institute for Social and Economic Change. And then the milk cooperatives, the data are from Karnataka, the state where I am located. Most of the members in cooperatives, milk cooperative societies are women. And the government, what it does is basically the cooperative societies, what they do is that the Milk Federation, or which is, it opens the milk collection centers and also and sets up milk chilling plants. And then here you can see that there is one of the milk chilling plants. And then they also supply, Federation supplies feed to cattle, the price of which is lower than the market value. And the main purpose of supplying the feed to cattle is to enhance the fat content so that the profitability for the producers is increased. And then insurance facilities also provided to reduce the production risks. And milk is collected twice every day. And the cooperative society located at the village level, it gives away a daily slip, which provides information on milk collected and what is the fat content. And this is mainly done for transparency and accountability. And Milk Federation fixes the procurement prices, and these broadly reflect the cost of milk production. And the income that is earned by a woman member, is credited into bank account once in a week. And this will enable them, especially women, to have regular flow of income. And incentives are also given by the government, and that is some kind of the price difference is provided, and also annual bonus. And these two things will encourage women to participate in this thing. And health insurance is also provided to family members as a protective measure. And we have tried to compare the kind of social value that is created by milk cooperatives as social enterprises. And a comparison is made between members and non-member households. And then the aspects that are compared here are average days of work per year, average wages obtained, occupational diversification, access to social protection, health crisis faced by them. As you can see that in all these aspects, the member households are better off, either slightly or substantially, as compared to non-member households. The slightly they are better off in terms of employment availability and average wages that they have obtained. And when it comes to access to social protection, they are very well, they're substantially better off. 70% of the member households had access to health insurance, because of which the health crisis faced by them is lower as compared to non-member households. And we also looked at the issue relating to empowerment of women. And this I am quoting from a study conducted by my colleague, Dr. Manjula. And she found that over 51% of adult women reported that milk production is their principal occupation. The share of income from milk production is 25 to 50% for 30% of the sample households in our study, and 50 to 75% for 32%. So this basically shows that the milk production constitutes a significant proportion of their income. And how is the income from milk production is spent? She wanted to basically see that whether some kind of social value is obtained by through participation in milk cooperatives. As you can see that the children education, spending money, the income on children education and health expenditure, this accounts for 1/4 of total income. And reinvestment is also agriculture as well as purchase of new cow, and then it constitutes about 28%, and about 35% goes for consumption. But you can see that here, both the social consumption and reinvestment, they are significant components of on which income from milk production is spent. And then she also looked at the issue relating to mobility and decision making. As you can see that with the question that are you usually allowed to go to the market, nearby health facility or places outside the village, most of them stated that they would go there on their own. And likewise, are you allowed to take a decision on children education, household consumption, self-purchase? And then most of the women respondents, they gave affirmative answer. And then I'm aware that, so also my colleague, that this is, this information has to be presented by age groups, and also the control group should have been there. But with those limitations, what the data show is that the participation in daily cooperatives as social enterprises has enabled the women to have decent work and then empowerment in the process. Now let me move on to self-help groups. And then self-help groups provide microfinance services in India. And they provide small savings, credit, and insurance facilities for setting up or expanding income-generating activities relating to agriculture, allied activities, and non-farm sector. The whole purpose of this is to increase household security. And usually self-help groups are formed by external actors, such as government, staff, or NGOs, and also banks. And SHGs are self-managing institutions. The rules and regulations are formulated by members themselves, and they have their own governance structure, and they also have simple but effective accounting principles or records. The two activities that they undertake are contribution of savings and avail credit for consumption as income generation, and they are also expected to contribute to empowerment to the members, both within and then outside, that is in the community. Self-help groups. And then let me present some kind of statistical picture, that is the number of SHGs linked to banks. And then as you can see that in the last year, the total number of SHGs linked to banks through NABARD SHG linkage program was 1 crore and 2 lakhs. That means 102 lakhs. And this is very high number. And then the amount of savings mobilized through SHGs, and then again this is data related to the SHGs which are linked to the banks in the country as a whole. And it has gone up from 5,500 crores in 2008 and 9 to now 2,000 crores. Likewise, loans disbursed to SHGs by banks has also gone up from 12,000 crores to almost 78,000 crores. So the self-help groups have been having a very important place in India, and this is in a way summarized in this small table. The number of villages in India right now is 6,45,000, and the total number of self-help groups is 102 lakhs. And if you simply do the arithmetic of number of SHGs by number of villages, and you will get this figure that on an average, there are 16 self-help groups in each village. Even if you assume that each self-help group is it covers 10 members, the number is very, very significant. But then what kind of impact do these self-help groups have? And I have been conducting some research on microfinance groups in India. The major issues are the following. That is, self-help groups typically provide credit for consumption. I'm not saying that they are unimportant, but this is our survival activities. These two are important, but at the same time, they don't really go beyond this thing of graduating from consumption and survival activities to the market-oriented enterprises. So this is the one important problem. The second important problem is that they're faced by some kind of high variability, and then they are formed and then they are closed. So this is how it is, and then so therefore you don't really find the sustained development of SHG movement. And this is something which is found out by...
You have about 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I'll be able to complete within that period. Thanks a lot. And the recent paper by Abhijit Banerjee and Esther Duflo, this year Nobel laureates, their paper is on the miracle of microfinance. And then I'm just presenting it in terms of the relative size of this paper and then the kind of impact that this has had. And they found that microfinance among women leads to an increase in investment, but does not result in changes in the gender dynamics of households. So this is one important findings that they have come up. Households with microfinance had more new businesses than more profitable existing business than those without. The third finding is that microfinance did not have an impact on total household spending, but it did lead to shifts in spending from temptation goods to durable goods. In short, although microfinance is associated with some positive outcomes, it does not appear to immediately impact other development goals such as gender equality or educational access. So, basically the kind of social value, what is this is something which is still an issue with the microfinance groups. Here, what I'm trying to do is that basically trying to ask this, answer this question, that is, which of these organizations is best suited to promote social enterprises? And then this time I am proposing to do by comparing the cooperatives and self-help groups based on the evidence that I have just now presented. Cooperatives are membership-based and member-controlled organizations, and SHGs they self-managed institutions. They are created by somebody else, but then entire management is by members themselves. And then the second aspect of comparison is that the kind of organization structure that they have. Cooperatives tend to have formal organizational structure. So at the village level or at district and higher level, it will have chairperson and board of directors, and then these are elected once in a while. And then whereas SHGs are informal organizational structure, each of the SHG will have just a president and treasurer, and even if they are federated, and they will also have some kind of, there may be some kind of formal structure may be there. Cooperatives will invariably have some federation, and then village level cooperatives are federated at taluk and then district level and also state level. And in the case of SHGs, no such thing exists in many cases. Notable exception is Kerala, where Kudumbashree groups are federated. But in many other parts of India, that there's no federation. And as far as the election and thereby accountability is concerned, cooperatives will have regular elections, but then in the case of SHGs, there is an informal change of leadership, but then this often leads to elite capture. The government support. The cooperatives, at least by in the case of milk cooperatives, they are getting considerable infrastructure support, but some similar support is not provided to self-help groups. The government control is high on cooperatives, but when it comes to self-help groups, the impression that many people have is that most of them are independent and they are formed on their own and they are independent. But the evidence is that 60% of SHGs that are linked to banks through NABARD SHG programs are they are under the flagship central government programs such as National Rural Livelihood Mission or National Urban Livelihood Mission. So about 60% of them are linked to government programs.
Please try to, Rajshekhar, please try to wind up now.
Yeah, okay. The outcomes are moderate to high, and then they are put to moderate in the case of self-help groups. Scalability and sustainability is high, whereas it is low in the case of SHGs. And social value creation and market orientation is high, and it's low in social value in the case of self-help groups. And this is my last slide. And while it can be suggested that cooperatives seem to be having an edge when it comes to promotion of social enterprises, but we cannot really ignore the question that why some people cannot be part of milk cooperatives, in this case milk cooperatives. And I am basically highlighting issues in connection with the fieldwork that I have done. A lack of space to rear milch animals, no previous experience, they do not possess skills. Members are usually landed, and land as a collateral helps them in obtaining bank credit, and whereas this kind of facility is not available in the case of non-members. Is to landed households because they have access to fodder and therefore it becomes easy. And then final thing is that this is the, I think, major problem, that is the cooperatives are captured by well-off households belonging to dominant castes. And this is also corroborated by the decline in average size of milk cooperatives. So in conclusion, what I would like to present to the august audience is that the cooperatives seem to be having an edge as compared to self-help groups, and when it comes to social enterprise promotion. And self-help groups, they're very they're present all over India, and their presence is very significant, but they have not really graduated from that of micro institutions and a force to reckon with at a larger level. Especially, they don't have.
I think we have to stop now. I have to stop you. Yeah.
But this is where I stop.
Yeah,
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You've raised a lot of questions in the comparative picture, so I'm sure you'll get time when there are questions. I think that if you can stop your screen sharing. Dr. Joy Ellerman is he with us? I think Dr. Joy Ellerman is not here. So we will proceed. I will request Mrs. Sharada Muralidharan, IAS, who I think will bring a very different perspective from what we have heard because of her experience with Kudumbashree and SHGs in Kerala. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, yes, I wanted to respond to that last slide which compared cooperatives and SHGs. I would have had a very different take on it. But but since I would just thank you everyone for inviting me to this very interesting discussion. I'm sorry I was not able to be there at the start. We were caught up in a meeting with the Government of India, basically to get our plans approved for what was talked about earlier, the NRLM, etc. were the plans for next year were getting approved. So the discussion topic is as to whether sustainable entrepreneurship and social business is the way forward. And the first question that comes to mind, I am sure that question has been discussed, but from a government perspective, where we haven't really thought of, we think in terms of micro enterprises and livelihoods, and haven't really given much thought to what constitutes social business. So I thought maybe I should looking up the net as to how social business is being looked at. It came across interesting things, and of course, the most from the Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus's description of social business, or definition of social business, as business which is created solely for the purpose of solving a social or environmental problem, and therefore where it is a business proposition that does not allow the individuals to recoup on their, to have any dividends except recouping investments, to the idea of a social business which solves an issue which is social, but at the same time is able to, through that solution, is able to garner profit. So where evidently then what we see, and that is a distinction that is made between social business, which does not go in for profit, and social and enterprise, which does look at profit. So maybe we are looking at something which is in between, where we strike a balance between the objective of attaining a social good or common good, but at the same time being able to use business as a way of achieving it, and also augmenting it. And augmentation means financial. So it is not just about ensuring wage employment. It is also about developing entrepreneurship. It's about developing business skills. It's about expansion, and it's about growth. So having said that, to look at the context, and I will be talking from a completely Kerala context. And this, in Kerala, today's context, we have a context of, when we are thinking sustainable entrepreneurship and you think sustainable development, the first question is, how are we handling the environment? And what we see around us is decades of environment degradation and ensuing climate change, which is not specific to our state, which has become a global issue, but which has local and very significant impacts. These impacts were seen by Kerala in the way the floods hit us in 2018 and in 2019, the landslides, the awful recognition that the Western Ghats, that our mountain ranges were actually very fragile, and what that meant to us. The fact that we suddenly needed to look at all those people whom we thought of as nature terrorists and say that maybe what they said makes sense. Maybe plastic is polluting the ocean, and maybe we are generating way too much waste, which is not able to, which the earth is not able to sustain itself. The earth will jolly well go on, but humanity may not. And if we want to look at humanity surviving, we need to get our act together. And then comes the pandemic. COVID comes in, and COVID brings along with it not only health and food insecurity, but it brings in instability, unintended economic consequences. And all of these are issues which, again, so while these are very specific to the way the state has been dealing with the context, but this is, again, interestingly, a global context. Another global context that I would talk about is the rapid stride in digital technology, and how there has been a globalization of information, the creation of a knowledge society. The opportunity there is an opportunity for access to hitherto, to people for whom hitherto access was not even a dream they could have. But then the flip side of it is that technology and the use of technology and the gradation and use, the access to technology also generates with it by itself a wealth divide. So we've got this issue of why we are looking at taking all of this in, and as governments, we are thinking of the larger common good. We think of the social need that needs to be met. We are looking at whether there are economic solutions to social issues, whether there is a win-win context that can be built out of this. And in Kerala particularly, the solutions that we are looking at are by and large, particularly if we are tracking those who are on the margins of society, those for whom poverty and hunger are real, those who are on the lower side of the economic spectrum. It is about decentralized governance, and decentralized governance delivering to them. And decentralized governance would mean decentralized solutions. And when we look at technology, globalization, knowledge societies being contextualized in a decentralized framework, we suddenly see lots of opportunities here, because better knowledge means better solutions. It also means that the idea of local can be something that you can expand, because while you could look at a local entrepreneur who looks at a local market, but that local market might become bigger by virtue of access to, say, global, to larger platforms, to media platforms, to social media messaging, to new branding solutions, and that the local is actually in a position to harness larger markets. And so we could expand, in a sense, or redefine what it means to be local, a local entrepreneur. The other aspect here, when we're looking at social justice and responsible enterprise, would also be the context of the creation of community capital, a community social capital. And there I would like to, so, you know, in Kerala, the SHG network, the self-help group network, actually covers more than 50% of the population. So of the families of Kerala. So we would be saying that the bottom half of Kerala is represented in very tight federated structures of communities of women, and poor women at that. And these women have been able to, by virtue of their size, by virtue of their longevity, by virtue of their local positioning, where they work with local governments, they are accessing the support of the state government, and the central government resources are also pooled into them. They have become a force to reckon, a force to reckon with. So any program, any entitlement-related intervention that happens, you find that the Kudumbashree network is the center of things. The MGNREJs, the largest unskilled wage employment and employment generation program in the world, in Kerala, its manifestation is it is basically Kudumbashree who are in it. They operate it. They are the ones who are working with it, and coming through this program and mobilizing to come into this program has also meant that they have gotten into matters of their local ecosystems and economy. It has they have gone into looking at using these resources for social solutions. They have also looked at identifying extremely vulnerable communities and bringing them into the into social security nets. So all of this has happened by virtue, again, of having a strong community network. This community network then spans a certain skilling on account of which the resources then become a little bit more specialized. So you have community-based trainers, you've got workers like the Asha, the Anganwadi worker, and you will find invariably that they are very closely linked to the Kudumbashree network. You also find that in governance and social entrepreneurship, there is a shift in demand when we're looking at eligibility, when you're looking at people and you're looking at human resources. There's a shift from academic learning to lived experience, and the knowledge and the value of that knowledge is being increasingly recognized. We have, of course, also the skilling initiative, which looks at moving people from informal to the formal sectors. And again, here the network is in a wonderful position to be able to capitalize on that. We've had, again, as part of the central state connect, sector skill councils, expertise levels being certified, and we find ourselves being able to push ourselves through levels of skilling into higher skill sets. So much so that today, we could actually look at someone from the Kudumbashree network taking on a course in coding or artificial intelligence because that is part of the future, but they have ability to access it. So this is just the context that I wanted to place in. And right now, having talked about the pandemic and about the problems and the vulnerabilities that we realize that we are in, the question comes, okay, what are we doing about this? How are we going about it? And where does entrepreneurship and business, social business fit in this? So, to come up with some examples that we have, that government becomes a creator of social business, of social enterprise. So one such social enterprise that was created in the context of the pandemic were what were known as Janagiya hotels. So 1,000-odd hotels have been created in the last few months, which are looking at providing subsidized meals to populations, particularly in a time of food insecurity. We've had, there's been a problem of stray dogs in the vicinity, and then Kudumbashree network has been trained to get into the look of neutering them. We've had problems in the context of COVID, the need for disinfecting offices and spaces on a regular basis. So the disinfection teams have been coming in. Food insecurity is a big issue. So then we mobilized marginal farmers into joint liability groups, and they are identifying fallow land, both private fallow land and cultivating them. Am I still audible?
Yes, you are. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, because it's just a little bit of a hitch here. We've also looked at the cafe kudumbashree was an enterprise that came out of a natural instinct of poor women entrepreneurs to say, you know, food is what we know, and making good food and that making good local food is what we know, and so then converting that into a USP and creating cafe kudumbashree, which is about local, authentic, organic food. Home shops where you look at community itself as the consumer, and look at local enterprise groups which can service that consumer. So there are multiple models that we've created for social business that have come in. The second area would be about the technical support structures, like the Asha Anganwadi, whom I talked about, and then even for operating of the community groups, you come up with an entire enterprise that takes on work. We've got Akshaya centers here, which are looking at doorstep services, including providing services to people who are bedridden and unable to come to the center to get their mustering done, to claim their entitlements. So these kind of support interventions and technical resources have been garnered. And then one of our biggest interventions has been with the Harita Karma Sena, where we're looking at, you want to have a solution to the problem of plastic, to the problem of glass, to the problem of waste, which we don't, we are generating now and we don't know what to do with it. So then come green enterprises and Harita Karma Sena, again Kudumbashree network, women who are taught to collect non-biodegradable waste, to look at sorting and segregation, also to look at composting interventions, to provide technical support for composting, so that you have a solution to your bio-waste. You also have a solution for the non-bio waste, and this is across, because across the state, in the local villages and panchayats, we've had plastic and waste looming up, and so then you need to look at localized solutions as well. Now, I'm just going to wrap up here in terms of what are the pros and cons of this kind of government-supported interventions. One is, of course, the fact that the mobilization of the poor can be done at the level of government like nobody else can. The credibility, the reach of government is massive and beyond anybody else's capability. The second is the fact that there can be these interventions, and if you're looking at focusing on social entrepreneurship and business, you are ultimately looking at an equitable distribution of wealth that can be brought in by these interventions. And the third would, of course, be the social benefits. You are actually providing a service which is, you are servicing very poor and very marginalized sectors, and you have been able to convert that into viable enterprises. So there's a huge social benefit also that comes out of this. So these are the pros. What are the cons, however? And there are cons. The thing is, these groups can be dismantled as easily as they are created. This question of empowerment, because ultimately, if the poor were empowered, they wouldn't be poor. So when you are looking at creating enterprises of the poor, we also need to remember that they're extremely vulnerable. And so the sustainability, unless there is consistent handholding, support, protection, even from vested interests, the sustainability is questionable. And entrepreneurship, I mean, it's something that has puzzled me as to why we presume that the poor would have much greater entrepreneurship than the rest of us. Because we are shoving down entrepreneurship solutions on poor as an answer to their livelihood needs. And that isn't perhaps a just or fair way of addressing their problems. There is, of course, the risk of elite capture, which was mentioned earlier too by the earlier speaker, but elite capture is real and present, and it is something that we need to consistently fight against. And there is yet another issue, and which is that of dependency syndrome, which government almost invariably creates in the sectors and the interventions that it promotes. And that dependency syndrome will end up with people not being able to grow on their to grow out of the clutches and from under the wings of the government. Now, finally, in order to, so what would be my prescription in a context like this for social business to actually become the future. It is important that every step that we understand the risks that are involved, because the context might be similar, but specifically on the ground, there are very specific risks, and it's important to recognize those risks. The second thing would be, once you recognize the risks, then you have to look at how can the enterprise be risk-proofed. So risk-proofing of enterprises is also something very critical that needs to be done. And it needs to be accepted and acknowledged that there is actually no substitute for inherent capability. We cannot, from outside, manage social businesses. There's got to be a way of developing, of supporting, of handholding, but also of letting free. Having an entrepreneurship develop an inherent capacity to grow on its own. And then comes this question. So to do all this, we need to have an enabling environment. So what is the, how do we create an enabling environment? What would be the policy prescriptions that would be needed to make sure that this works? I would just stop there because that's the end of my presentation, because I just would like to leave you with these questions. Thank you.
That was perfect timing. Thank you very much. I'll now request, once more I'll check with the organizers if Dr. Joy Ellerman is present. I guess he's not present. I'd request the speaker, Dr. Rajshekhar, to put on his video, and the participants as well, so that in the question answer session we can let me set the ball rolling by saying it's been a very fascinating session from Venezuela to Kerala, and I have also the different experiences, the comunas, sociedades which have come sort of out of a revolution, as it were, the cooperatives and self-help groups. I assume that was in Karnataka that Dr. Rajshekhar was talking about, which perhaps have been initiated through external action, and then of course the SHGs and women's groups in Kerala. And I think the last speaker has given a very useful summary of the pros and cons. And I think that perhaps that's a starting point for questioning. So this is a general question, and perhaps to Professor Rajshekhar, because you had seemed to suggest that at least in Karnataka, the cooperatives had more government support, and as of now were more viable, whereas the SHGs were on a somewhat smaller scale in terms of income and sustainability. So, is that, can we think of a future where that's not necessarily the case, especially as cooperatives in many parts of India, other than milk cooperatives, are bogged down in all kinds of rules and regulations. The agricultural cooperatives, for example, in many parts of India are defunct. So that would be sort of, looking beyond the milk cooperatives, what would be your view on a future of cooperatives versus SHGs? I would like to also pose a question to Ministra Herrero, and that is if she could, one is, as we heard in Kerala, about 50% of women are members of SHGs. So we heard that about 1 million plus women are in these comuna sociedades. What proportion of women is that? And secondly, among the social enterprises, again, Honorable Minister mentioned various activities like textiles and agro-processing, which have been more economically gainful and or economically profitable, and why would that be? So I'll just raise a few questions here, and perhaps allow Dr. Rajshekhar, Minister first, and then Dr. Rajshekhar to come in for a few minutes by the time we collate the other questions which are coming in to the chat box. So over to you, Sonia.
Señora ministra. Señora ministra, ¿me escucha?
Sí, la escucho.
Señora, hay dos o tres preguntas. Una de las preguntas es que usted dijo que las mujeres, que la participación de mujeres en los consejos comunales es de 56-57%. ¿Qué proporción es este 56% de la población de mujeres en Venezuela? Y la otra pregunta que sigue es que usted dijo que estas comunas se dedican a textiles y panadería, etcétera. Entonces, estas unidades socioproductivas, ¿cuál es más productivo, más rentable? ¿Qué actividad es más rentable? Y hay una tercera pregunta que está en el chat, en el buzón, que dice que cómo trabajan las comunas en esta situación de sanciones.
En la primera pregunta, que tiene que ver con la participación de las mujeres en los consejos comunales y comunas en relación a la población venezolana, oscila en un 35% de las mujeres.
So the answer to the first question as to what is the proportion of women, if it's 57 in the communal councils in relation to the entire women population of Venezuela, it's something like 35%.
En el caso de las actividades productivas más rentables, bueno, tiene que ver precisamente por la región donde estemos ubicados. Pero puedo colocar, por ejemplo, el tema agrícola, que tiene que ver con la siembra de nuestros alimentos, y en el caso de la transformación de materia prima, sobre todo la fuerza en el ámbito comunal es la producción textil.
Okay. So the second question, Dr. Swaminathan, which you asked about what is the most profitable enterprise which the communal councils or the socio-productive units of the communal councils take. So she says that it depends on the region, really, but in general it can be affirmed that it is the agricultural food production related activity which becomes most profitable. But it's also, depending on the raw material available, the textile industry.
En el caso de las sanciones impuestas por el imperio a nuestra patria, ha sido una oportunidad para las venezolanas y los venezolanos porque nos han permitido organizarnos más, nos ha permitido el hecho de que ahora no podamos tener las grandes oportunidades de años anteriores, que además el rentismo petrolero nos permitía la importación. Bueno, hoy nos vemos obligadas y obligados a la producción en el territorio, la producción nuestra. En ese sentido, también quiero resaltar el hecho de la pandemia. La pandemia ha contribuido a que aumente la organización, pero también la producción local, porque en el marco de las cuarentenas, que ha sido efectivamente planteada por nuestro presidente Nicolás Maduro, y que en ese método de cuarentena social y colectiva, voluntaria, que nos hemos tenido que quedar en nuestras comunidades, bueno, eso nos ha permitido también innovar, y ha salido una gran cantidad de emprendedoras y emprendedores, pero sobre todo de las mujeres, que se ha visto incrementado. O sea, vemos, aunque suene contradictorio, vemos que las sanciones a nuestra patria y el hecho de la pandemia ha logrado que nos organicemos más y que por ende tengamos que producir más desde la localidad.
So, as far as the question about the sanctions and how the communes have been sustaining themselves during the sanction, the minister says that it may seem like a contradiction, but in fact it has proved to be an opportunity. The sanctions have proved to be an opportunity to organize ourselves more. And though in earlier years we had greater governmental support, we have now been obliged to work locally in our territories, in our regions. And in fact, even the pandemic has led to a situation where the communes have increased the local production and has led us to innovation and therefore led to new women entrepreneurs. And she says that though it's contradictory, seems contradictory, but actually the sanctions and the pandemic have strengthened the commune system.
Thank you. I will now ask Dr. Rajshekhar to say.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I think you have raised an important question. Looking at the macro picture, I think your question seems to be quite relevant. And then that is milk cooperatives, dairy cooperatives all over India are quite very well organized. And then they are quite successful. But I think what is important is that learn the lessons from some of this successful this one. Recently we have brought out a book. This is on the cooperatives and social innovation. And then this was published last October of last year, where we present a number of case studies from the Asia Pacific region. And there are also 3 case studies from India. And one of them is Dharani Food, this basically Timbuktu in Andhra Pradesh. That is also a successful cooperative, which as one of the participants has already raised, it was converted from self-help groups to cooperatives. So it began as a self-help group kind of this one, but subsequently this in order to scale up and in order to exploit the marketing potential for the dry, they are involved in the production of the basically coarse grains and inferior cereals like korra, jawar, and then things of that kind, in order to market their products, and then they have become a kind of cooperative subsequently. So that is I think that is one of the things that can be done wherever the self-help groups. And then for the last 20 years or more than 20 years, I have been doing research on self-help groups. And then I'm aware of self-help groups, the status of their status in several parts of India. And then I admit, I already made the statement that they are quite different as far as Kerala is concerned. Kudumbashree seems to be quite different, although I'm not quite, I have not really studied, but I have studied elsewhere, the self-help groups and other things. And then thinking that they begin with great promise, and then they remain small, and then they don't go beyond something. And then even in some of my students, so their PhD thesis, I can tell you very clearly that. And then now there is it's a kind of, from one microfinance group to another microfinance group, it's basically there is a shift of households, or sometimes you have 4 or 5 members from the 2-3 members belonging to the same household having membership in different groups, and basically borrow from one group and repay in another group, and net effect is very seems to be limited. And especially the enterprises. The enterprises, I have seen several of them, and they remain at a survival stage. And then there are some honorable exceptions. I'm not saying that everywhere they remain like that, but there are only honorable exceptions. But the general phenomenon is that they remain at a very low level. But in response, yes, I agree with you that great cooperatives in the greater part of India, they are in bad shape. Even in Karnataka also, they are in bad shape, and they are defunct, and they are plagued by government interference, lack of leadership, and so on and so forth. But we need to now find solutions. We cannot let self-help groups in greater part of India to remain like that, and we need to find out the models so that it's not from cooperatives to self-help groups, it has to be from self-help groups to cooperatives. I think that is something which needs to be thought about. The other thing that I wanted to make here is that the vast presence of self-help groups is basically utilized by banks for their goals of financial inclusion and for government programs for dispersing their subsidy, margin money, and so on and so forth, or NRLM, NULM, and some of these things. For sake of these programs, self-help groups come up. At the moment the program ends, they die down. So that seems to be happening. I think that we have to rethink our strategy as far as self-help groups is concerned. Barring Kerala Kudumbasri experience.
Okay. Thank you very much. Can you mute Rajshekhar? So I would also now like to ask Sharada, because this question has come up. You know Kerala. Do you think that if SHGs are made into cooperatives, they'll be able to scale up and be sustainable? So some of the cons, will they get better if you do that?
Yeah, thank you. So while I spoke only about Keralitis, I would also like to say that I have worked in NRLM. I was had been in NRLM in its formative years and had the opportunity of seeing the self-help group networks in many parts of the country. I've seen them in Tamil Nadu, where you have a federated structure. They've got village organizations. I've seen them in Karnataka. Karnataka is a pioneer, but we found in Karnataka a very strange reluctance to scale, to federate. So the whole pattern of NRLM was about learning from the experience of Andhra Pradesh, erstwhile Andhra Pradesh, now Telangana and Andhra Pradesh, and Kerala, where it was seen that the SHG, all the problems that Dr. Rajshekhar mentioned were identified by the SGSY credits committee. There was a committee which looked into SGSY credit and reported on it. And they found that what made the models of Kerala and Andhra work were, one, the fact that they were federated and that federation brought in strength. Two was the fact that they had generated a massive number of community resource, trained community resource, which was able to keep the federation strong and not allow it to dissipate. Third was also the fact that there was a special mission which was looking at all of this. And there was dedicated human resource and hand-holding that was done. But when the NRLM rolled out, so the problem had also was, maybe to a certain extent, that NRLM rolled out in a very specific format and did not allow for local models to develop. And so rather than building from what was already there, it was a one-size-fits-all context, which was seen to be slightly problematic. So the opportunities of federation. So you had Mavim in Maharashtra. You had in Odisha. You had Sri Shakti. You had groups. You had sometimes there were other departments that had created self-help groups. So all their learnings and experiences needed actually to be consolidated. And if they'd been consolidated, if you look at the Kerala experience, you will find that Kerala, the neighborhood groups that came up, we actually called them neighborhood groups. We did not call them self-help groups, and there is a reason. The reason was because when they were framed, when they were created, it was actually imposing the structure of an SHG on the idea of community participation in the village sabhas, gram sabhas. So that is why they were called neighborhood groups. because the neighborhood group was conceived as a subset of the Gram Sabha. Therefore, there was this already a sense of the SHG as something which was connected with the larger local governance system. That is one important aspect. The second thing was, again in Kudumbashree, there was a distinction between the thrift and credit activity which the neighborhood group did, and that was critical for its sustainability and survival. But the entrepreneurial activity was not part of the self-help group's DNA. That was something, enterprise was something that you would find people from across groups coming together because they were driven by an understanding and interest in doing something. And you did not impose it upon a particular self-help group just because somebody had that capability. In Kerala also, one of the contrasts that were made between SHGs and cooperatives was the fact that there were no elections in SHGs. Whereas in Kerala, we have, from 2008 onwards, for 12 years, we've been having regular elections. In 2 years, it was originally 2 years and then became 3 years. But so that election process has been something which every 3 years, you also find that there is an energy that comes into the system. And this energy comes in because, somebody is, there is elite capture, it's an opportunity to break that. There is dissension and breaking up of groups, this is an opportunity to break that. And also new groups come in the hope. So new groups come in the hope that they can associate and do, some new things differently. So there is, and also the fact that it's been very interesting to see that it has helped in local leadership also developing because, they all said and done in election, whether it is within the Kudumbashree network or outside, it's a political enterprise. So then they learn the ropes of in politics. And when I'm saying politics, I don't mean party politics, but it's about the politics of engagement, the politics of power, promise, and achievement. So there is that kind of dialogue and capability. The women also discovered that as collective they had strength. That as collectives they could negotiate. They could negotiate with the local power structures in the panchayats and in the municipalities, and that was very important to their being able to continue and to take on work and to work with business. Because we need to remember that the Kerala model is a model of convergence with the local government, and we are talking about very powerful local elites. So the system has been able to stay. The fact that it has been able to survive despite these powerful elites is a testimony to the power that has been generated out of the collective. And the problem is, is cooperative the way to go? Or is SHG federation, the federation itself? I would certainly say that the absence of federation can and will kill SHGs. So federating is the way to go. It could be as cooperative, it could be as another system.
Thank you. I think we will end on that note because what we heard just now, to me at least, there is a big parallel between the Kerala experience of SHGs, the fact that they federated, and what we heard from the minister in Venezuela, that you have these social production units, but they are part of those larger communes or people's communal councils. And I think that is something, of course, it's a very different historical trajectory in Venezuela than it is in Kerala. But I think there's an interesting parallel here, that you have these small units, but you have possibilities for engagement, for information exchange, for market access, for knowledge sharing, which is with a larger federation. However, I would like to say that at least from the Kerala experience, there's still much way to go in terms of income, taking income up to the next level, with some exceptions, of course. There are some remarkable Kudumbashree groups, but to scale it up, I think requires some more experience perhaps. And the last point I would like to make is, I think that because this is something which came from the speakers, that, public support, I think, is essential. And it is wrong to see it as dependency. In fact, I would say NREGA is dependency because it's not something sustainable in the long run. Whereas having social enterprise or having some business enterprise, and businesses fail, particularly small businesses. So it's a learning curve, and the poor cannot be left to take that risk, as was mentioned. So social support remains, I think, the backbone of this. I will allow Sonia 1 minute to translate my comment for the Minister about the parallels, and then I will close the session.
The Minister seems to have a help there.
Okay, fine. Oh, that's great. That's great. Thank you again very much. I think there's a very interesting session with 3 experiences from different parts of India and the world. And I am very grateful to our speakers, to the Honorable Ministra Herrera for taking time to be with us, to Professor Rajshekhar from ICGE Bangalore, and to Madam Sharada Muralidharan to join us at the end of a long day and a lot of work, I'm sure. Thank you all. This has been a very interesting session, and some of these points will be put up for further discussion at the concluding panel tomorrow. So thank you once again for your participation and for the lively discussion. And thank you to our translator, Sonia.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for raising some of the questions, Professor Swaminathan.
We should meet in Bangalore.
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. Buenas noches. Buenos dias.
Thank you for the great deal of depth that you were able to cover. We have a lot of notes and a lot of transcribing to do. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.